Hey everybody, hope all's having a good weekend. Looks like we're going to be safe for school tomorrow, so we'll probably be there. But still want to try this flipping the classroom thing out. So I'm going to go through the PowerPoint that I would want to go through. I'm going to go fairly quick because you'll be able to stop the recording as you need to and either take notes or jot down questions that you have, and then you can ask those questions tomorrow in class while we're working on the activity. So if you have a question, me and you can talk one-on-one, or if it's a good question that the whole group needs to hear, then we can talk about it as a group. Okay? So we're talking about the bureaucracy. We use the bureaucracy with the executive branch because the executive branch, the president, is in charge of this. And what is the bureaucracy? Well, it's the method of organizing the federal government to help the chief executive, the president, carry out the law. So remember from our executive branch part, we said that the president carries out the laws. These are the people that are going to assist him in carrying out those laws. So why do we care? Well, because the laws don't implement themselves. We make a law, and if we could just have everybody follow it, that would be great. But there's people out there, if you can imagine, that will not follow the laws. And so we need someone who's going to enforce them. Since the president can't do that by himself, we have created these agencies that are out there, these different bureaus and things like that will go out and carry out the laws. How does it affect me and you? Well, if we break a law, if we do something that's against one of the policies that's been created that they're in charge of, we might have to deal with them. Okay, and the answer, you see, they're responsible for carrying out laws, administering social programs, and providing defense. Those are their main jobs. They're supposed to be nonpartisan. Nonpartisan means they're not supposed to be Republican or Democrat. They're just supposed to look at the law and carry it out. Okay, and so they're supposed to do that with no bias, no prejudice. Everything is created by Congress. The president doesn't create these things. Okay, Congress passes a law, and then they create the agency that's going to be needed to enforce the law. So if they were to do something completely new as far as a law goes or a policy goes that wouldn't fit under the umbrella of an existing agency, then Congress would create another one. Bureaucrats are appointed by the president with consent of the Senate. Why are they not elected? Well, we don't want these people, these bureaucrats, to be concerned about how their decisions are going to affect their election chances. So, hey, if I make this decision, if I enforce this law this way, it's going to upset these voters, so I'm not going to do that, or vice versa. We don't want them to have to worry about that. We don't want them to worry about their decisions and things like that. So that's why they're picked by the president and not elected. We have 4 types of government agencies, and this is what we're going to be dealing with in class. The cabinet we've spent a little bit of time on already, so I'm not going to spend much time on it, but the cabinet positions are and fall under the bureaucratic agencies. Okay, the cabinets are like the top, and then all the agencies that we know of fall under these cabinets for the most part. Okay, so the FBI and things like that, we're going to see some examples in just a minute. You see what it says there, manages a permanent national interest to promote some particular function. So think Secretary of State, Department of Treasury, whatever it might be. We've already said they're appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate. They have undersecretaries, deputies, assistants. It goes a long way down. There are people who work in these and under the cabinet positions their whole career. They don't change. And then each one is broken down into smaller units called bureaus, offices, or services. And then they have their own budgeted staff. And that comes from the OMB, remember the Office of Management and Budget. They will do the budget for these people. And here's some of the examples. The Bureau of Land Management falls under the cabinet position of the Secretary of the Interior. The FBI falls under the Justice Department, IRS, Treasury, and then Immigration and Naturalization Service, Homeland Security. And we could go on down the list if we wanted to, but we're going to look at some of these examples tomorrow. Okay. Next up is independent regulatory agencies. And these guys are like a watchdog. Okay, they make and enforce rules designed to protect a specific public interest. They are going to investigate, advise, and report. They oversee a certain industry oftentimes. They're not part of the cabinet, but they have cabinet status. So what are some examples, and then we can talk about it. The example down there is the Federal Reserve. Okay, we'll talk about how that is in just a second. Who runs these guys? Well, panels of administrators called boards or commissioners. And it's always an odd number, so 7, 9 to avoid the tie. They are insulated from the politics, independent from the direct executive control. What does that mean? Well, these guys are sometimes picked by the president, Okay, but then once he's chosen them, he's hands off. He cannot mess with them. Alrighty. They have fixed terms that overlap the president's, 3 to 14 years. And like I said, the example is the Federal Reserve. The president of the Federal Reserve is picked by the president, and he might survive a president or two's terms. So he might have 1 or 2 presidents that he is going to be answering to. Okay, as much as he can be answered to. But the main thing to understand with the regulatory agencies is they usually regulate something. Okay, the Federal Reserve, they regulate the money supply. Their job is to control the money supply through their tools. They have 3 tools. You're going to get a macro next semester, so we're not going to get into those today. They don't print money, but they just they control the flow of money. These things have both quasi-legislative and quasi-judicial powers. How is that so? Well, they get a law from Congress that the president has signed. They get it, and they get to interpret it and decide a lot of times how they're going to enforce it. Okay, yes, the president signs a statement and says, this is how I envision it. But at the end of the day, these are the guys that get to make the actual decisions on how to enforce this thing. So they might get a law, and they might interpret it completely different than anybody else, Congress or the president. Okay, same thing for quasi-judicial powers. Since they're getting to decide how to enforce it, they might be able to look the other way on certain things. They might decide not to press charges, so they have a little bit of powers there. Okay, and we already said this. The examples are the FDA and the EPA. The FDA is the Food and Drug Administration. The EPA is the Environmental Protection Agency. They get to do a lot with the laws that are written that affect them. Okay. We just said this here: rules, enforcement, or interpretation, punish the violators, administer adjudication, to resolve disputes between 2 parties, so sort of like a mediation situation. Okay. Last couple things here: the government corporations. These are corporations. They are for profit. They make money, but they're owned and run by the government. Okay. So they are in competition with corporations and businesses that are of the private sector. Okay. They charge cheaper rates usually than the private sector does, and they have some freedom because they're supposed to be making a profit. Okay, so they're supposed to be making a profit. Do they always make a profit? No, but they're supposed to make a profit so that the government doesn't have to fully fund them, although the government has to fully fund most of them. Some examples: the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation. If you go to the bank, look at their windows, they're going to have a little sticker that says FDIC insured. This comes from the Great Depression, and it was a plan to protect banks. The TVA, Tennessee Valley Authority, Postal Service, so the United States Postal Service is a government corporation, and then Amtrak. All those are examples. Last up is independent executive agencies. Don't get these confused with independent regulatory agencies. People get them confused a lot of times. Independent executive agencies aren't going to be the regulatory ones. Okay, and that's the big difference between them. They are not part of the cabinet. They perform a specialized service, but rarely have regulatory functions. So once again, keep that in mind. These guys do not regulate businesses and things like that. Okay, they will report directly to the president, and their ministers are chosen by the president and serve as long as the president likes. So these guys could be out when our current president is out, or maybe the next president likes them and lets them stay. There's no hard, fast rules there about how long someone can stay in office in these positions. Excuse me. Lastly, the examples: NASA and the CIA. Both these are independent executive agencies. NASA does not regulate space. Okay, they explore. They do not want people traveling to space. They have pushed to not have it privatized, but some people are pushing the envelope. Elon Musk and things like that, his trip to Mars and whatnot. And then the CIA, the Central Authority, not Central Authority, the Central Intelligence Agency. They're going to be protecting us from foreign affairs. This is the spies and all those sorts of things. Once again, they don't regulate that stuff. They're watching. They're watchdogs kind of the foreign stuff. All right. If you have questions, please come with them to class tomorrow. We'll be working on our assignment tomorrow in class. You'll need a phone or a laptop or something like that to be able to Google and look up some of the agencies that we're going to look up, and then you'll classify them. Okay. Hope everybody has a good weekend. Take care.